You. And we are live for Ozprop Wednesday night. You've got the new co-host Steve Polisi, and Joe's indisposed for the last couple of days. So I've brought in the big guns. I've got Toddy Sloan. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Mate, pleasure to be here. Really looking forward to unpacking a lot of the detail with Kylie.
Yeah, I was laughing at you before this, how I said I'm really good at talking but not good at asking questions. So I need someone who's a bit more composed. But we've got full guests on.
I'll be question city, all ready for it.
I'm already talking over you. But we've got Kylie Bazzi. My history with you is long. I think you did one of my earlier residentials. Worked with you a lot at Rethink Investing when I was there. Sending a lot of clients your way for resi and commercial as well. But welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm really excited. Bit nervous, but excited to be here.
No, you'll be right. You'll be fine. So do you want to maybe start off and just give us the background, how you started your business called World Class Conveyancing, but where that all started?
Yeah, 100%. So I didn't typically come from a legal background, early days. It wasn't the first career I got in. I probably started in more sales and customer service roles and then spent quite a few years in debt collecting. But I think that gave me a bit of an edge because I find a lot of solicitors and conveyancers might be great at legal work, but they're not great at customer service, basic customer service skills. And so I started the journey because I was drawn to people, helping people through big milestones. So I love helping people in like really stressful situations, trying to calm them down and take the stress off them. So that's sort of where I got into conveyancing. And once I was in conveyancing, I sort of got to, see more how the process is quite stressful and confusing at times. So that's where I started World Class Conveyancing because I just wanted to start a business that was a bit more straightforward, easygoing, flexible, client focused and not just more legal law firm type. And look, I think I've built a good reputation on that with a lot of referral partners or other colleagues in our industry. So that's definitely good. Recently, we've expanded as well. So we're not just World Class Conveyancing anymore. We're World Class Property Collective. And we help sellers or buyers, not just with the conveyancing, but also with their property makeovers. So we help them with, painting, flooring, blinds, staging, styling to maximize the sale price. And also just to build that dream space for buyers or investors, moving in or renting it out, whatever their situation might be. So yeah, I mean, that's where I came from. And I think clients that we deal with, one thing they always say about us is she's got our back. She'll never leave us in the lurch, or if something goes wrong, like I'll be there if I had to midnight to make sure it turns right. And so, yeah, I think that's how I'm seen in my role.
I'm sure you'll probably echo this as well, Steve. Sorry, man. I think we might end up jumping over each other a couple of times, bro. But I'm sure you'll echo this, that a good conveyancer, it's almost kind of like you guys are really you're not appreciated, I feel, in the industry, and I mean this with all due respect. It's almost like when you're in like a bar. I don't really go out anymore, but if the DJ makes a mistake, everyone knows about it, right? But if they're doing their job, the music's just kind of going, and you're just kind of enjoying things. And I feel like conveyancing is almost a little bit similar. If there's a mistake that happens, everyone knows about it, and you point the finger straight away. But when things are actually going really well, it just kind of ticks along in the background. But it kind of leads me to the question that a lot of the time conveyancers can actually move things along faster, can actually really help the deal. What are some questions that people need to start asking their conveyancers and start really jumping into to actually pull them more into the front seat and actually utilize the skill set that really isn't spoken about as much or seen as much?
Yeah, so things that I tell investors or anyone in a property journey is to get us involved with the rest of your team early on, because obviously we're there to not only protect you and sort of safeguard you and check the contract and the leases and all that sort of stuff, but we can work with your strategy. So we could, help negotiate finance clauses or longer cooling off periods or due diligence clauses or longer settlements if you need to pull money, from other places, or rent back clauses and, all those sorts of things that can help align with your strategy. And so, and are really important, which sometimes people don't think about. Most people just think real estate agent, mortgage broker, and they don't think about us too much. We're more seeing a lot of the times of like we're just filling in paperwork and ticking boxes, and people have actually said that to me in the past, and it's really not that. It's a lot more involved than that. But get us involved early with the rest of your team, like your accountant, your buyer's agent, your mortgage broker, because a good team around you is going to be able to help you get to where you want to go.
Absolutely.
One of the things.
Sorry, mate, you go. Yeah. I was just going to say the negotiation point. It's something that I bet you so many people just don't even think of to ask their conveyancer. But sorry, man, you go, Steve.
I was going to take a step back when Kylie mentioned about how like the clients actually enjoy working with her, and like to echo your point, it is a weirdly thankless job because you're just dealing with problems, and then if there is no problems, you're just a fee that people don't want to pay. And my partner Lisa has the same thing. She's an insurance broker. No one enjoys paying insurance, so she can spend 10 hours doing something, and it's kind of like a stuff you have to pay a premium for it kind of thing. But the thing I noticed, I'm going to give you a plug here. Kylie calms the buyer down more than fixes the issues. So she's there to fix the issues, but most people get cold feet, especially with like commercial or resi, and they start panicking because you'll get some conveyancer or solicitor who just finds the problems and says, here's all your problems, whereas Kylie actually works to get a solution. And the solution might be crush the deal, which we do quite a lot. And Kylie's done a lot of our commercial ones where I can tell you they're not fun. Like they're constant issues coming up. And it's just basically she's like the in-between of the selling agent and the buyer and the buyer's agent just to sort the problems.
So in terms of the questions then, like especially because I'd imagine that the commercial stuff is totally different to your resi stuff. How do you even weed out if a conveyance is actually good for it? Because I'd imagine there's some conveyances that would be like, yeah, I can take the work, and maybe they're actually not a good fit for that kind of stuff.
Actually, let's jump on difference between solicitor and conveyancer, because I get asked that all the time. People go, oh, I'm going to pay more because it's a solicitor. But what's your thoughts on that, Kylie?
Yes, we hear this a lot. So just to let people know what the difference is. So a solicitor can deal with other areas of law outside of conveyancing, like family law or personal injury or criminal law. Mind you, they don't deal with all of them. They usually specialize in probably one of them, where conveyancers can only deal with property law. But the difference is, like, there's great conveyancers and great solicitors, and there's bad conveyancers and bad solicitors. You're not getting any better because one's a solicitor and one's a conveyancer. I know many conveyancers that will knock solicitors out of the ballpark, and some great solicitors that will make the conveyancers look like crap. So it's nothing to do with the solicitor versus conveyancer. But I always say, that we're specialized in conveyancing. That's all we do. All day, every day. And someone could go and do whatever industry it is or whatever work it is that might not even require a degree or a diploma, and the experience alone could make them better than someone that even did it. So we obviously have to get a degree to become a conveyancer, but the experience on top of that, you can't beat it, because I know I've got many solicitor friends that call me with conveyancing questions because they know I do it all day, every day. They might do a handful a month where I could be doing 50 to 100 a month. So I see a lot more than they see. And I think we're not only specialized, of course, but more flexible. We can pick up a lot of the day-to-day issues before they happen, where solicitors won't. They'll just roll with the motions, 9 to 5 legal, where we see it. Like, I can see it from a mile away. If there's an issue, like, I can already see it, weeks in advance and go, hold on, something's not right here. So no one's better than the other. There's, like I said, there's great in both, but the difference is we will do huge amounts compared to solicitors. So I think for someone that needs other legal work, for sure, get a solicitor, but not any solicitor. You need a solicitor that deals with that area of law. But for conveyancing, I would go conveyancer because they're specialized.
So otherwise, it's kind of like asking Steve to buy you a car. It's like, oh, well, you're buying, aren't you? It's like, yeah, but that's not the thing I specialize in buying. Like, so
yeah, that's right.
On that note, I quite literally just got off the phone to a friend that I was actually just helping buy, and explaining to him the certificate of currency. And he's going through his settlement period right now. And I'm like, dude, like, you need to get this. I was tell him to get it last week. What's a thing like that a lot of people are unaware of that you would see all the time as a conveyancer that maybe a solicitor doesn't see, that you might be jumping on the phone going, yeah, dude, this is normal. It might be a 1 in 100, but because I'm doing hundreds of them, it's a normal one for me that others will just miss.
Yeah, look, it could be, there's so many things. Like I think a lot of time, like we always have a laugh in our industry that whenever we get someone on the other side that acts for the seller or whoever opposite that we're acting for, always the painful ones, unfortunately, and I'm not being mean, are the solicitors. Like they just don't, they're not quick. They don't pick up the day-to-day as often, as quickly, I should say. And so even little things like, you know, applying for ATO certificates or ordering, you know, searches or things at certain times because, you know, next steps, if you don't order things by that time, the next step's not going to happen. They're probably not as quick at doing those things or picking up those issues or things that could delay the process as early as they should. They're hard to get hold of because a lot of them, you know, deal with other legal matters. They're in court or things like that. So it's hard to get hold of. And most of the time when we're dealing with a solicitor, it's not even them. It's usually their assistant doing the matter. So although that poor person thinks, oh, we've engaged this brilliant solicitor, it's not most solicitors are not sitting there doing conveyancing. Most solicitors I know say, I wish conveyancing didn't exist. Like I charge $600 an hour, but you want me to charge $2,000 for 12 weeks of work? Get out of here. So it's just that.
There's probably a generalized statement, but I find that the solicitors just want to cause problems and drag the problems out as opposed to just coming up with a solution, because the seller wants to sell and the buyer wants to buy if there's no issue. But I find the two conveyancers or two solicitors sometimes go head to head, and the bill wraps up as well. The bill gets bigger and bigger and bigger, especially with commercial.
Yeah. They're not as flexible. I think they don't have that customer service type background. It's more legal, court, 9 to 5, and it's just black and white for them. And so, yeah, it can be hard sometimes, some of them dealing with them. Not all of them. Some are great. You know, of course, if they specialize a bit more in conveyancing and property stuff, some are phenomenal, but there's plenty that are not. So there's definitely, you shouldn't be picking on conveyancer or solicitor. You should just be picking on reputation, service, you know, what that professional is going to give you. But yeah, definitely in terms of comparison, we do huge amounts of conveyancing compared to the same type of solicitor.
We were saying off air, was it close to 10,000 deals that you've done, which is just ridiculous.
Easy. Yeah, it could even be more, to be honest. That's sort of a best guess. Generally, like we do sort of 30 to 50 matters a month. And that's at the moment. I've had times where I've done 100 a month or 150 a month. So even just, off that 20 years in conveyancing, I've been in conveyancing now. So yeah, if you calculate that, it's sort of 500 a year, and at times it's even more.
I understand you can't talk addresses and names and like specific details, but what's like one of the worst horror stories that comes to mind? Like, I feel like right now, it's like when you talk to a doctor and you're like, oh, what can you tell me about what's happened in the AR room? It's like, is there something that you've had happen that is just like, okay, you would never believe this, but watch out because you want to make sure you protect yourself, even though it's a slight risk?
Yeah, look, there's many things that happen and many things that can go wrong, and people don't realize it early on. But, just like a couple of stories I can think of off the top of my head is, I remember back in 2016, and I opened World Class Conveyancing in 15. So I guess it was still sort of early days. And we had about 8 or 9 investors that were referred to us by a buyer's agent who were buying an off-the-plan vacant land lot in Riverstone. So obviously they were on the hype that's near the new airport. This is a golden nugget. Like, it's going to be amazing. It's off the plan. The agents have all said to us they're going to register in 12 months. Even if we don't get finance, we don't care. We're going to on-sell it for so much more money. It's going to be prime, real estate. And so I had to go through the contract with the buyers, of course, and say, there's a 4-year sunset clause. So just, you've got to understand what that means. Not saying the vendor or developer is going to use 4 years. It's probably not their intention. They probably want their money quickly. But things can happen outside of their control or just life. And it means that if they don't register.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to ask, for anyone that doesn't know what a sunset clause is, do you mind sort of opening that up a little?
That's a good question. So a sunset clause is basically the latest date a vendor or developer in the contract has got to register the plan and have the titles issued before a purchaser then has the right to say, I'm done waiting, I'm pulling out of the contract and get my money back and walk away, essentially.
So essentially they'll have their deposit tied up for 4 years from what you're saying.
Correct. So they've got it tied up for up to 4 years. And of course, the vendor at the time is probably not anticipating 4 years, but things happen. But the buyers, they really weren't taking that in. They were just like, no, it's fine. The agent said 12 months. It's great. This is going to be a gold mine. I'm going to be rich. I said, okay, cool. So they bought. That was all in writing, obviously. So the 12-month hit, and it didn't register. So I started getting the calls every few days from these buyers, 8, 9 of them all the time. What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? I said, look, you just got to wait. There's nothing we can do. Anyway, they didn't register until 4 years later. And that was right in March 2020 when COVID just hit. And all these buyers couldn't get financed. Some had either lost jobs or had hours cut or whatever their situation was. They couldn't get financed. They couldn't on-sell it. And the vendor ended up terminating all of them and keeping all their 10% deposits. And so that was devastating because the hype at their start was very different to the outcome later. And for these people, they weren't rich people. They were everyday people that just saved money to buy an investment property and just lost literally what they've been saving for many years or their whole life, some of them.
And if they're 10% deposits, you're not talking a couple of grand. You're talking tens of thousands of dollars of people's money.
Yeah. One guy in particular bought 3 of them. So he lost, I think, it was about 200 grand.
Shit.
Yeah. I remember people started doing that when they had the 5% deposits, and you'd get people like, oh, I put three down. I've got 15%. It's great. I'm just like, you still need to be able to finance it. But while we're touching on that, do you want to go through, because like, I know OzProp, we don't generally publicize like off the plans, but what are typical things you need to look at if you are buying off the plan? Like, what are the must not haves, I should say?
Yeah, off the plan. Look, they're so hard because the developers and the vendors draft those contracts to really benefit them and nobody else. And they don't like negotiating on them whatsoever. So they're always tough. But you need to, the first thing I look at when I go through an off the plan contract is what's the sunset date, of course, and what are they being told by the agent? So if the agent's saying 12 months and there's a 4-year, well, let's see if we can try and negotiate the sunset down maybe to 2 years. But we have to check what the buyer's strategy is too, because if they say, no, the longer it takes, the better for me, well, then I'm not going to negotiate it on that one. But the other very important thing is to make sure the sunset dates have a cap, because we've seen a lot of sneaky contracts where they can extend those dates unlimited. And so you could essentially have a contract on foot forever. And so we have to negotiate to make sure there's caps on those sunset dates, that if there is an extension clause, it's capped at a maximum amount, because we need a date where we can get out. Otherwise, again, your money's tied up for years, and we've had it in many situations. Doing your homework, obviously, on the developer and stuff. And if you've got a buyer's agent, that will probably help. They might be able to do some homework or some due diligence on the developer.
I thought he was going like that then, but it was his pen. I thought he was like, yeah.
Oh, no. So yeah, definitely doing some homework, understanding the risks around finance, having good chats with your finance broker, because with off the plan, you're not going to have an approval at the start. Even if you did, it's going to lapse in 3 months and you'll have to reapply 1 year, 2 years down the track, whenever it's going to finish. Understanding and negotiating a reasonable settlement period. So different states have different rules and different sort of, the norm. But like some of like Queensland, for instance, they always try and make it as 14-day settlement from registration. That's a short period, where New South Wales, we're mandated to have at least 21 days. So negotiating those sort of periods, making sure that, people are getting updates before registration is coming so they can start the finance process and they're not trying to do it last minute. But look, I always tell buyers that not one property fits all. You need to really work around what suits your life, what suits your finances. Everyone's got different finance situations. Everyone's got different risk tolerance. And so one person might say to me, off the plan's brilliant for me. I don't care if they take 10 years. I can save so much money and it's going to be awesome. I've locked in my price, happy days. Where I get another buyer come along and say, I've just borrowed $2,000 from mum and dad just to pay the legals on this, and I'm borrowing 95%, and the broker thinks it might be all right. Maybe it's a bit risky for that client. So it's more around, every client's different, every situation's different. So we try and tailor what's important for them.
Yeah. Can I ask, and the answer might be if this doesn't happen. But what's a clause that sometimes you find, whether it's developers or just anyone really tries to put out, I'd imagine it'd be more so developers, trying to put into a contract that actually has no kind of legal precedence? Like, because technically you can chuck anything in the contract that you want, but it doesn't mean that it's legally binding. Is there something that you see that sometimes people just try and sneak in there, but it's like, nah, what comes to mind?
All the time. So sometimes with like off the plan, for instance, again, because they got so many clauses in theirs, they'll have things like, if we don't reach the sunset date, either the purchaser or the vendor can rescind the contract, meaning like bring the contract to an end and give the deposit back. But for instance, like in New South Wales contracts, the vendor can't rescind anymore. There's been updates to off the plan legislation. I believe it was 2015, where they changed it to say that no, once the sunset date is reached, if they haven't registered by then, the buyer can pull out, no problem. But the vendor can only pull out if either the buyer agrees or with a court order. But yet they still try and put these clauses in. And now they've even tried to go around that and put other clauses not around the sunset. They say, if we don't get funding or the development's no longer viable, the vendor is allowed to rescind the contract. So essentially, it's like the vendor can just rescind for any reason, or if there's delays with the sunset, they say, oh, the vendor can delay the sunset, for any reason they like, and their project manager will be the, who determines that. So there's always, all like release of deposit clauses that they put in there, which is a big no-no, especially in developments. People try and put those in. They try and put like settlements at 14 days. And for instance, if that state's mandated to 21, it's like, you can't be doing that. So there's always clauses that people are trying to put in that contravene legislation or regulations, and they still try. Because the reality is that you might have a legal right as a buyer to certain protections or certain legislation or whatever it may be, but enforcing those rights are another thing altogether. And so developers know that the everyday buyer is not going to take them to the Supreme Court and fork out $100,000, for those few visits. So they use that quite a bit. So there's always clauses in contracts, especially, higher value ones, off the plan ones, that just purely benefit the vendor or the seller and nothing for the buyer whatsoever.
It's just more to the point about you wouldn't know this as a general punter on the road. This is
no.
But and if everything went wrong, it's the music is stopping, you're noticing real quickly. But if you've got 100%. A good conveyancer on your team that's like, actually, wait a second, this and this, total BS.
Yeah. And sometimes I try not to stress the clients out. Like, I don't even tell them initially that, hey, there's all these terrible things, and I don't want to freak them out. So usually what I say to them is, I'm just negotiating some amendments, let me get back to you. And they could be horrendous, but I don't want to stress them out at that point, because I'm pretty good at negotiating those things. Steve can probably attest to it. I am really good at negotiating those things. Sometimes I have to be a little bull terrier, but and then once I've got the responses,
you always seem nice when you're talking to you until there's an issue, and then the real Kylie comes out.
No, but it's like sometimes you just get nowhere. You're just hitting a brick wall. But so I go do my thing first, and then so sometimes the client won't even know I've gone that far and got them that outcome. Like, I'll tell them, obviously, look, there's things there I had to negotiate. Don't worry, thumbs up. We got a great outcome. And I give them all the good news so that I don't need to stress them out unnecessarily, because I always feel the conveyancers, like, and I say that to clients, I feel like we're always the messenger of the bad news, like always, like, oh, these conditions are terrible. Oh, that lease is terrible. Oh, you got to change this. No, don't do that. And so we're always giving the bad news because that's just what we have to do. And so, I try and make it as stress-free as possible.
One of the things I always say about conveyancers, they're the only person in the whole system of buying a property that is generally like looking out for your best interests. Like, buyer's agent wants a deal go through, they want to get paid. Mortgage broker wants a deal go through. Conveyancer gets paid either way. So they're them pointing out problems is they're generally the only person in the whole thing looking out for your best interests.
Yep. Purely, like, that's our only job, is to, like, it's drummed in our head daily that, if something goes wrong in this matter, you could swear black and blue you did everything right and you could still be found liable. So your duty is to protect that client with every ounce of your soul. So that's literally every time we're talking to a client or another colleague or the other side or agent, our head's just going, is our buyer protected? Are they getting any bad deal here? Do we need to change something? Are the conditions good? So that's our mind 24/7. And it straight away goes to what are the risks? What are the risks? What are the risks? So trying to manage that, which seems like a downer, bad news messenger lady, manage that with the customer service and making it a great experience is tough. But, over the years, you get the skills to be able to do well in that area.
Yeah,
what makes you love it, Kylie? Sorry, actually, no, go for it, Steve.
Yeah, there's a question here on YouTube about what if conveyancers not being transparent about the contract, though? I'm not sure if they're referring to being the seller or maybe the buyer. But I imagine if your conveyancer's not looking out for your best interest, they're not your conveyancer then.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'll probably need more context to that to answer it. But no, we're always transparent about the contract. We're just working out how to not stress. If we literally get you on the phone and say, oh my God, let's go through these 700 special conditions. The vendor can do this, the vendor can do that. You can't do any. Nobody would buy a property in their life. So it's more just balancing it to go, okay, let me do my thing here and try and get these things changed and made better for the buyer. But at the same time, not stressing them out unnecessarily, because some of these things could be pretty standard in a contract, although they're bad. And so it's trying to balance that. So no, conveyancers and solicitors are usually going to be always transparent about the contract. That's all we're doing all day, every day. And if we're not, again, we could get sued. So not sure what they mean about that specifically.
I was going to take a little bit, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but like when you find an issue, for instance, you will then obviously, because I'm the buyer's agent, will tell me, hey, there's an issue here. And then I'll go to the selling agent and see what solutions we can come up with. Because as you know, if the conveyancers or solicitors just go head to head, it just goes on forever. But at least if it's like, oh, let's see if we can get a price reduction. Let's see if we can extend settlement. And we find by me going to the selling agent, them going to the actual seller, we can actually get it resolved outside. So it's like this weird, like we're working together, but separately, sort of.
Yeah, having a good team, again, is important, because if you're not strategic about the way you're asking things or the way you're requesting things or what you're asking or how you're asking, the solicitor on the other side just takes it sort of like, puffs up and can take it personally in a way, and they just fire back, or you get no movement. So sometimes I've even got to be a bit strategic and say to the client, okay, we're going to go to the agent first, but the buyer's agent will, so I don't look like I'm stepping on any toes. Let them chat it out, see what solutions they can come up with. And then if they do come up with a solution, that will go back to the seller solicitor. So when I go in, it's nicer and better communication. So it's just being strategic, because we know the industry. We know how the other sides are. We know the things that people ask. We know when people ask us if we're acting for sellers. We know the language. We know the lingo. We know exactly how it goes. And sometimes the way you write formally to each other is just because you have to write that way, not because you want to. Because at the end of the day, I remember a senior conveyancer once years ago said to me, Kylie, just remember, every time you're writing to a client or you're writing to another solicitor, you're not actually writing to them. You're writing to one day to a judge if the matter went to court. That's what you're writing for. Clients don't need things in writing all the time. They want a phone call more to go, hey, this is what's happening. Oh, cool. Cheerleader. You're writing to, not only reiterate what you've told them, but to one day, if you have to explain it in court or if something went seriously wrong, you've got the evidence to go, here it is. This is what we've done. This is how it's come about.
I'm going to ask Toddy a question. I'm going to ask Toddy a question. So Todd used to be a selling agent, Kylie. That was his beginnings. Selling agents annoy the crap out of me because they constantly just call me 24/7. They won't put anything in text and email. Is that sort of the opposite of what Kylie's saying? Is because by not putting anything down on paper, they can't be liable? Or is that just a selling technique because they know they'll get more emotions out of you when you're on the phone?
This is a question directed at me.
Yeah, at you.
Yeah. Okay. Two things. So one, yes, the emotional side. I remember the very first written pitch I ever had to do. It was for a development site, and I had to actually submit it to a board, a CEO for a hospital that I was selling for. And I remember I was thinking at the time, this is ridiculous, because if I'm, I don't know, a dancer, and you want to see if I'm the best dancer, watch me dance. Don't get a proposal on me writing how good I am at dancing. You watch the thing. So if you're employing someone for their sales skills, listen to them sell. And so there's a part of that. It's like, that's the thing that you're good at. So you want to use that, because text and email, have you ever seen that clip where the guy's all like, hey man, whatever, I'm cool. And it's like, hey man, whatever, I'm cool. And he like reads it totally different. Yeah. It's hilarious, but it's true. There's so much truth to that. So when you're a selling agent, you have to constantly manage that emotion, that feeling, because it can be the difference between a deal coming together and not. Whereas when you're talking about managing the litigious nature of being a conveyancer, I don't want to have that conversation over the phone. If I was you, Kylie, I'd be wanting absolutely everything in writing, like document. So I think, yeah, it's a little bit of the emotional side, a bit of the negotiation, but it's also, it's just kind of what you do when you're a selling agent.
I imagine the difference between selling agent, that's outcome driven, and conveyancing is process driven in a way, because they got to tick the boxes to make sure everyone's protected. So it's sort of like the in between, whereas the selling agent just wants to get the end result. The conveyancer wants to make sure during that process is done correctly. No offense.
Yeah, definitely. It's like we're all on the same team, but we have very different roles. And I think just understanding and appreciating every person's role helps, because, you know, the agents drive us mad every day, and we probably drive them mad too. So, you know, it's just having that open communication and having a good team around you and people knowing each other and understanding what's going on. It just makes it a lot easier.
I did want to ask you, Kylie, that if you find a clause in a contract, and again, if it's the development side, whatever, I'd assume it's probably more prevalent in developing, then there is those like red flag. Do you end up going, okay, no, this is bad. They're the kind of person or the kind of company that's trying to pull a fast one over you? Or is it a case of, this is just how the game is played, everyone's going to try and do this and try and sneak it in?
Yeah, you've got to be experienced enough to speak to the client to make them understand, because the reality is, again, that we don't like those contracts. We don't like one clause in there. If we were a seller and a vendor, would probably love them all, you know. So it's really hard. It's like we don't want to tell a buyer you should just accept these clauses. No, and we're not going to accept the clauses. But there's got to be a middle ground as well, because the vendor's not going to budge either on certain things. So it's more, again, a negotiation. You know, where can we find a middle ground here? The vendor wants some things for them. We want some things for us. Let's find a middle ground, because, you know, something that people don't realize is that if everything went hunky-dory every day, we wouldn't need a contract. Nobody looks at the contract on the happy days. You know, they give each other a high five. The contract comes into play when something goes wrong. That's the only time it's going to come into play, essentially, besides, you know, your general when you're settling or whatever. It's when something goes wrong. So it's so hard to negotiate these things when most will go right. You know, things go wrong too, plenty of times. But it's hard negotiating for the wrong when you want to just celebrate all the good. So yeah, look, you got to be strategic. And I more explain to the clients that, look, these are off the plan contracts, right? Developers, they try and put anything that's going to benefit them, of course. But in saying that, it's not a bad thing either, in terms of, like, if I'm a developer, developing is very risky. You know, developers, if things can go wrong, they can be bankrupt in 2 seconds. So the loss for them is much greater than your 10% deposit. So they want to put things to safeguard them as much as possible. And especially because development there's a lot of unknown, and there's a lot of parts to it that are out of their hands. So it might not even be purpose that they're just, you know, not great people and they just want to do the dirty on every buyer. It's just part of the developing game. And so we're not going to roll over and just accept them all. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to negotiate so hard to get every single thing I want changed, but I know I'm not going to get every single thing I ask for. But at least if I get the material things I want, then I think that's as fair as you're going to get.
One of the ones I want to use as an example, Kylie, do you remember was it $9.5 million commercial deal we did? And it had like 42 special conditions that we had to go
42
through.
pages, Steve.
42 pages that Kylie had to,
Jesus.
and they were pretty much inflexible while it changed. But I want to take a step back from there.
Yeah.
what are the main difference between a residential conveyancing process and a commercial? And I've been told I'm not allowed to make this commercial show, but I'm going to anyway. Is there any differences in the process with that?
Yeah, about 42 pages.
There's yeah, definitely. Well, commercial obviously is higher risk, definitely higher reward when they go well as well. So I'm not dissing it, but anything with high reward comes high risk. So wherever there's higher risk, you're going to get people wanting to put all sorts of, weird clauses or clauses that just protect them. And look, we see it every now and again. Not every contract has 50 extra pages or sometimes even 100 extra pages of special conditions. But when you start reading them, you're just shaking your head. You're like, how am I going to negotiate this one? Like, this is next level, And so you start obviously going in hard with everything because you're not getting everything. But that's how you have to start it, because we just want to at least get to the middle somewhere, because otherwise it's grossly unfair for the buyer. And how can I make that sound nice to any buyer in any way, shape or form? Like, there's no way I could call a buyer and say, yep, they've got all these 50 pages of special conditions. They can pull out when they want. They can charge you whatever they want. They can change the price. They could do this. They could, no matter how I say it, even if I say it with a smile or with a dance, it's not going to sound good. So I at least have to try and get it down to a more acceptable level. And it's hard sometimes, because sometimes the vendor solicitor just won't budge on even the smallest thing. And it's like, come on, you need to work with us here. This is a negotiation. Like, you could lose a buyer over it. So let's work together and try and find a happy medium. But explaining to the buyers too about developers and the risk for them, is huge. So it's sort of more just educating them around that other side that you wouldn't see. You would just see the contract and go, oh, dirty people, look what they're putting in here. But it's more just being educated around the whole process and not just one side.
So it's a lot of emotional management from what you're saying. So it sounds like you're almost trying to, like, you're the doctor trying to just make a tumor sound like a bump on the head. It's like you say what it is, but let's just make you not feel as bad about it.
It is hard. It is, you got to be strategic. And so there is times where I go in so hard, I ask for the world and I get zero. And then no matter how hard I've tried, it's still zero. So that's when I have to go back to the client and say, look, this is a situation. We've asked, we've tried, we've begged, we've pleaded, we've had the agent involved, we've got the buyer's agent involved. I'm still getting absolutely nowhere. I'm going to have to now send you a big email about what all these mean and what the risks are for you. And it's going to be your call at the end of the day. Because again, these only come about if something goes wrong. And it's not every day, like, it's not every matter that something goes wrong. So it's like, a buyer might down the track, if they didn't proceed, go, oh, I kick myself now. That was an awesome investment, but I didn't proceed because if these ifs that could have happened didn't happen, probably didn't happen, the next buyer settled. And so it's really hard to have those conversations.
What about protective measures? So we know with like commercial, you can get a due diligence clause. So going back to resi, like different states obviously have different clauses you can get for finance, building and pest, due diligence even. Do you want to maybe give us a little run through of like the general differences in the states?
Yeah. So to answer your question that I probably didn't answer on the last one, do the resi as well have, those same sort of clauses and conditions? Not to that level generally. Residential, a bit more straightforward in terms of the type of conditions and stuff they have. They might have an odd few that were like, no, that needs changing. But generally, they're a bit more easier managed, less risk. People more come to the party on those sorts of things. So that was just to get that out the way, because I slipped my mind. In terms of the different clauses, so again, different states probably work a bit differently. But just as an example, like residential, for instance, in New South Wales or Queensland, you've got a 5-day cooling off period. They differ about when they start, but there's a 5-day cooling off period with both. Generally, you'll have finance clauses on both, unless it's auctions, then they're very different. That's a very different kettle of fish. Generally, you'll have finance clauses. With resi, you might have, finance clauses are not the norm for New South Wales, but for other states they are. All of the other states they are. Pest and build clauses, again, that's probably not norm for New South Wales, but they are a bit normal in the other states. So they vary, but you can negotiate whatever it is you like, essentially. And again, your professionals that you have involved, like your buyer's agent or your conveyancer, they're going to know what they can and can't negotiate in that state or on that particular matter. But yeah, they do different. You won't ever usually find a due diligence clause for a residential because you're not going to do that type of high-level due diligence on a residential. They're lower risk. There's a housing crisis. People are dying to rent properties, so they're generally lower risk. And so you won't do as much due diligence as you would on a commercial. Commercial, you'll have a lot of due diligence and your whole purchase is rounded around that due diligence, where res is not, probably more around a pest and build and finance.
They won't even give you the information until you sign a contract with commercial for most of the due diligence anyway, because like they want obviously sometimes it's like 20 pages worth of documents, whereas residential, building and pest and but the type of residential I've actually found, I've been like looking for principal place of residence, as you know, around the Northern Beaches, and the agent straight away wants you to sign a 66W. There's no calling off, they straight away. So it just depends on what type of asset you're getting as well.
Yeah, it depends on the area and the market at the time. So I find when the market's hot and things are selling like hotcakes, you've got agents wanting to take everything to auction or sign everything with the 66Ws, which means you're waiving your right to a cooling off period. And probably more so in some more high value areas as well. I think the view is you got more money, you're right, like sign it and let's go. But again, it doesn't suit everyone. Everyone's situation's different. I might have some clients that I know their history, I know their finances, and I know what's possible. And I know they always have a plan B if something went wrong. So cool, they can sign a 66 because the risk for them is low, versus a first-time buyer scraping every dollar together and had to borrow $1,000 off mum just to cover council rates. No, so you really got to suit it to the type of client and the type of matter you're dealing with.
Speaking of the risk side of things, Kylie, for anyone that's a little bit newer at this and maybe there is more in the residential space, can you actually open up what is the risk? Let's say that they just go, yeah, cool, sign here, press hard. I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, I trust you. What can go wrong? With residential? Yeah, if you sign a 66W and all of a sudden they can't get their finance together, let's say, could you sort of take the way that would unfold?
Yes, so the biggest thing is finance. So obviously with the 66W, the banks or lenders are not going to give you unconditional before you sign. They want to see a signed contract with a price and your details before they even usually book an evaluation. So when you're signing with the 66W, waiving your right to a cool-off, it means you're going in with the hope you're going to get finance. And a lot of clients think a pre-approval that's it. Pre-approvals make or break and we're good. We've got a pre-approval. I get the same wording probably daily where a client comes to me and says, I want to negotiate it on this purchase and I want to, sign contracts, and the agent's asking for something called a 66W. I don't know what that is, but let's just do it. And I always have to say to them, you do realize like you only got pre-approval. Like that's just, initial interim look at what you're giving the bank or lender, and they're saying, yeah, based off what you've told us, we'll lend you up to $1 million or whatever it might be. Like that's not unconditional. And I've seen people have pre-approval and not get unconditional later. It happens. So essentially you're buying a property hoping you're going to get finance later. And so if you sign that contract and that 66W, waive your call off, pay your 10% deposit, and then you don't get finance later, the vendor will terminate the contract and you'll lose at least a 10% deposit. And sometimes they could sue you for other damages if applicable. So that's probably
if they can't resell it for the same price that you've been contracted at, then legally, are they allowed to actually come after you for the difference?
Yes, they can. If it's more than your 10% deposit, they can. Yes.
Got it. Okay.
And I've seen it happen.
That's what I was going to say. I'm not trying to scare the poop out of anyone, but it's just more of the realities of going into something like this without actually understanding what the potential consequences are. But again, this is the whole point in having an experienced conveyancer in your corner to be like, wait a sec there, mate. Do you know what this is about? And are you sure you should be signing this just yet?
Yeah, I could say probably nearly 100% of clients that we deal with don't know what a 66W means, but because they're so excited about the purchase, they're like, oh yeah, the agent says send that 66W, whatever that is, just send it over. And they don't actually understand what it means. Also, even with things like these days, we're getting more and more agents provide buyers with a pest and build report or a strata report and things like that. Now, from a marketing perspective, that's awesome. And it's great you have it there in case there's an auction and you get a last minute buyer, whatever. But we have to then say to the buyers, you can't rely on that report. You have to get your own. and they don't understand, like, what do you mean? But they've given us a report. Like, why would I get my own? And that's another hard conversation, because we're not trying to make the agents look bad and go, no, you're telling porkies, and you're giving them all lies, and that report's bullcrap, because it's not about that. Like I always tell clients, I'm not saying anybody's doing anything dodgy or anything's wrong. It's just that it's been ordered on behalf of the vendor. That's the reality. They're selling you the property. They have an opposite interest to you. And even if that inspector just accidentally missed something or whatever the case may be, you might not have any legal recourse against anyone, because you didn't engage the inspector, you didn't pay for it, or you paid a minimal $50 fee for a copy. And so you probably won't have any recourse against anyone. So if anything comes up later, it's going to be too bad and it'll be your problem. So just things like this. And again, that pre-approval thing, clients never understand that that's not formal approval. It's a daily conversation.
On Facebook, Elijah Samuels actually asked a good question. He said, what if the vendor's conveyancer doesn't disclose information like termite history, heritage overlays in the planning, and you can't get a price reduction or sue them after the sale? But I imagine if they haven't disclosed it, it's on you, isn't it, the buyer, to actually investigate those things?
Yeah, so different states, again, have different seller warranties and legislation about what sellers need to give to buyers. But keep in mind, sellers will only give you what they're obligated to give you, if that. So, for example, in New South Wales, they only have to disclose any defects in title. So that would mean like maybe illegal works, that they've done to the property, something that would affect your ownership, or council issues, things like that. They're supposed to disclose. Not saying they always do, but they're supposed to. And then anything in terms of quality, like termites. The property is so bad, the roof's about to fall down, there's big water damage. Like, they do not have to tell you anything about the quality of the property. That's buyer beware. So that's up to you to go and investigate and do your own research. And even with the things that they do have to disclose around the defects in title, if you don't go and check it, well, you're just taking their word anyway.
Yeah.
So they don't have to tell you things about termites or any of that. It's only things that would affect your ownership and a defect in title that they're supposed to disclose. Similar but different in each state. But again, there's vendors that don't always tell, they're not that honest. So you still need to investigate and find out the actual information.
I've actually got a funny story from the weekend where I inspected a place, like a principal place of residence. And then when I first walked to the front door, the agent's like, just letting you know that the owner of this property and the neighbors don't get along. And I was just like, why are you telling me that? I'm like, you don't have to tell me that. He's like, oh, we've just got to disclose if there's any issues. And I was like, oh, agent's been really nice. Walk in, and then I look in the next door neighbor's window. He's got like a 3 meter by 6 meter Ozzy Osbourne poster with the finger up, and he's playing Black Sabbath. And I'm like, that's why he told me.
Well, that's good the agent told you, because I can't think of many situations where the agent's going to.
Otherwise, I would have saw the poster being like, what's going on there?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's pretty good that he told you.
Now, I was about to say, I think we've taken it to like all of the dark places, all of the things that can go wrong. We need a funny story to pick the energy back up. But is there anything else that you've got as far as like what we need to be aware of that you feel people do sort of commonly get wrong? That's maybe I want to say a little bit more lighthearted, but I guess this is exactly like what your wife's doing, Steve. It's the thankless stuff that is so important to get right, though.
Yeah, it's not they're not fun or visually happy topics to look at or to talk about, but things that people get wrong. So structuring for the future is something that people get wrong all the time, especially for investors. So it's really important that you're engaging with your conveyancer early, as well as your accountant or financial planner who's going to give you that advice. But structuring the deal properly in terms of the name you're going to buy it in, whether it's going to be an individual, a corporation, a trust, what sort of trust, a super fund. Like, there's so many different avenues, and they're, some are extremely complex. So getting that right is really important, because it can cost you heavily down the track in years to come if you don't. So having those conversations early on, not saying I'm going to give you tax advice or give you advice on the structure, but at least when you come to me, I can look at it and go, hold on a sec. Have you actually spoke to your accountant? Like, we can prompt you to do these things. So we're we're like your little, cheerleader in the background too, in a way, to go, hey, make sure you do this, and have you done that? So we can help you with the things that you wouldn't think of as an everyday buyer. Again, negotiating those finance clauses, due diligence clauses, pest and build, cool-offs, all those things. No one understands what they mean or what they should be or how long they should be or what the norm is. So people are always getting that sort of stuff wrong and not understanding, again, about the 66 Ws and things like that. So you have to just make sure that you're speaking to your conveyancer early and just running through your situation, what the plan is, what your future strategy is, and what you're looking at that time, so they can guide you and give you as much advice or tips as possible. Because, again, we don't see the property. We only see the contract, and the vendor is only going to put in the contract what they have to put in a contract. So there's so much information that's more important than just what's in the contract. Outside of the contract, especially with commercial, for instance, the due diligence and everything else is probably even more important than what's in that contract. The contract's a formality, but you've got other things outside of that you really need to get right and focus on. Otherwise, it can cost you a lot of money or a lot of stress later. Even lining up settlement dates, like, people just don't realize that they got to line those things up, especially if they're selling and buying at the same time. That's a whole nother kettle of fish, that one as well.
I can actually open up a funny story. Steve, you'll appreciate this one too. I actually did exactly the mistake that Kylie's talking about. I negotiated a deal years ago when I was in bed with COVID. I made the stupid mistake, it was in Queensland, of because I was just gone. But I didn't want to let it go. And I was like, that's all right. We'll put it in Todd's loan and or nominees, and I'll switch it later. You would know, Kylie, nodding your head straight away. You can't do that in Queensland, and or nominees is not acceptable. I then found that out later after I got better, and was like, bugger. Okay, so I can't put it in the trust yet because the trust was getting set up. So I'm like, all right, I don't want to lose the deal. Just go ahead with it. We're now going through the process of fixing that costly mistake, which, you'd both be aware is triggering stamp duty, CGT. I'm not going to get into all the details, but the funny story is I was on the phone with the lender today, who will remain nameless, called them up and told them, we're doing the switch, putting it into a trust, blah, blah, blah. And he thought I was the broker, and he was talking to me totally different. And he was just all like, it's a bit of an ugly one, isn't it? I was like, because this is the only one we haven't renovated yet. I was like, yeah, what, you just like the pretty ones, do you? And he's like, no, I don't know if we'll take this, mate. I'm thinking, you've already got the security, but sure, let's play this out. He starts telling me, the LVR needs to be this and that. And I think it was because I was talking about low docs and different LVRs, and I was kind of speaking the language. This is why he made the assumption. But then when he ended up digging a little deeper, and he's like, oh, wait a second, we've got this. This is ours. And I'm like, I was wondering when it was going to click for you. It's kind of felt like you're checking your wife out, wondering if you want to ask her on a date. You've already made the commitment here, mate. Like, I've got the security with you.
That's hilarious.
But the whole point is, it's an expensive exercise for us to fix, and we're going down the path now of fixing it because, unwrapping the rest of the portfolio without going into all the detail of it, it is actually worth us paying the cost and moving forward with it. But I wish I didn't make that mistake. It's literally a name. And it's going to end up costing us tens of thousands of dollars to now rectify. So just more to the point of what Kylie's saying, it's this one little detail, but there's big implications.
Tony, wouldn't it just be cheaper to change your last name to Sloan and or nominee legally and then avoid stamp duty?
Oh my God. I wouldn't be surprised if I get a buyer send that through to me, to be honest.
Well, I think our trust is called Batman something or other. So I wonder if I can just get my name changed to Batman and then anyway.
Yeah, the name thing's so important. That comes up all the time. People don't realize. And when I bring it up, like if I get a contract, I can usually just look at it and already I know something's off. And I call them up like, give me the trustee, give me this, give me that. And I'm like, this is not right. Oh, but, same. No, it's not. Like it can actually cost you stamp duty and other taxes.
Yeah, let me touch on that for a second because that's an important point, and that's the bane of my existence as well. People getting their trust names wrong. More importantly, self-managed super funds, like that is a can of worms that is just horrible. Like the states are different. In some states, you can put it in 3 different ways. Like, do you want to maybe expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, self-managed super funds are very tricky. There's a lot of laws around it, and obviously there's a different process if you're buying without the borrowing versus if you need to borrow money. So probably the most common things that come up is the name on the contract. Yes, they vary in different states. So in one state, it might be that you put, the bear trustee acting as trustee for the bear trust. In another state, you might just put the bear trustee on its own. If you're not borrowing, there won't be a bear trust, so you'll put the self-managed super fund. But clients themselves, that's the thing that we learn in our industry is we don't just accept what the client tells us. It might sound bad, but we know they don't know. So when I say to a client, what name are you going to buy it in? Oh, yep, Bob Jane T-Mart. That's good enough. And I already know at the back of my head from the questions I've asked and the things that he doesn't even know his name that it's going in. So then after usually contact his accountant or say, give me the trust deed and I can have a look and get the name right, because clients don't know themselves. That's how complex it is. And just to tell you how complex it is, I've bought myself in a self-managed super fund, and my own financial planner mainly the financial planner who helped set everything up, I got audited by the ATO and he got something wrong. They even put the wrong name on my self-managed super fund Macquarie bank account. And I was like, wow, if the professionals are getting it wrong, how's anyone else got a chance? So it is.
Yeah, we all know Jeremy Inwazelli. He gave us a cheat sheet for the self-managed super funds, and we look up that to try to at least have another person checking it. Then we say, go back to your accountant, and then people like you also pick it up as well. And we still get it wrong.
Yeah, it's so hard because it depends on the state, depends on the situation, depends if you're borrowing, depends if you're not. It's really conveyancers and solicitors get it wrong daily. Accountants get it wrong. There's
a comment on Facebook by Serena saying 100% check with your accountant for wording before offer. And I've seen accountants get it wrong. And then you're like you said, if accountants can't get it right, how's the buyer supposed to get it right?
Yeah, it's so hard. I feel like some everyday accountants who don't specialize in it might take it on because they've had that client for years. So they're like, yeah, that's fine. I'll do it for you. They're usually engaging external parties to draw up everything. But then they're even getting it wrong. And it's like, I'm looking at it going, nah, this is not right. Are you sure? And the accountant's like, yeah, no, definitely it's right. And I'm just thinking, I don't know what to do here. So yeah, it's even the best professionals can get it wrong because they are complex, especially the super funds. They're the most complex of all.
Right. On that note, I'm going to have to play an ad because Jeff Miles will kill me. He said I was supposed to play 40 minutes and we're an hour in. So here's an ad, everyone. Let's hope it works.
Everywhere you look, someone else is making money in property except for you. Your mate, he just bought a house that's already gone up $100,000. There's some bloke on Facebook, he's bragging about pulling in a 7% rental yield. Meanwhile, you're stuck scrolling real estate and domain, confused as hell and having no idea about where to start. Or maybe you're that mate that's got $100,000 in equity. You have a few properties under your belt, but you feel stuck. You're unsure about how to scale without over-leveraging and not knowing what the next right move is. So why does it feel like everyone else has some kind of secret that you're missing out on? It's because they do. There's a reason some people keep stacking properties while others sit on the sidelines stacking excuses. There's a reason why some investors buy under market value while others pay too much. There's a reason why investors know the hot spots before there's any heat. And there's a reason that some people build $150,000 in passive income while others just spend years thinking about it. And it comes down to knowledge. And that's exactly why Jeff Miles and I, Joe Tucker, created the Level Up Property course to hand you the exact step-by-step process that we've used to buy over $100 million worth of property in today's market. We've built Australia's largest property investment community with over 80,000 members, and we help everyday investors secure hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity, all without wasting years of their life trying to figure it out the hard way. Making an uneducated decision on the biggest purchase in your life is just gambling with your future.
Stop it. Get some help.
And this isn't just another how to buy property course. Let's be clear though, this course isn't free. What? And neither should it be. This is our life's work. We've spent over 100 hours each on this course alone. Oh, babe. Okay, video number 3. Number 4 with million does... Fuck. Done. We've got decades of experience, millions of dollars in deals distilled into a repeatable process that you can take away for yourself. If you're looking for free advice, there's plenty of noise out there. You can go and find that if you'd like. But if you want real, actionable, step-by-step guided process that works in today's market, then this investment is going to change everything for you. By the time that you finish this course, you will have full confidence. You'll have every tool that you need to build an amazing portfolio if you act on it, right? Which is why we have mentoring built in. So we kick you up the butt to make sure that you're kicking your goals. So the real question is, how much longer are you going to watch everyone else making money in property before you jump in and start playing the property game properly? Because the sooner you start, the sooner you start winning.
We're back. We're still working. Yes, we are.
Yeah.
We good?
God, that's
Yeah.
a long ad.
All right.
It was cool.
And
I didn't see it.
now.
Everything froze for me.
Mention Policey to Jeff and Joe, and I'll give you a 20% discount. Can't vouch that that's a real code, though.
Don't worry about the code. Just give us a discount.
I don't know if they're going to give it to you, but give it a try, everyone. All right. Where were we? Self-managed super funds. Do we want to maybe go into cyber and fraud, Kai? Like I know with my partner with insurance, that's a big thing. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, cyber and fraud in our industry is huge. So I think that we get emails probably daily, and that's coming to us, let alone what's going out. With some scam or someone pretending they're a real estate agent and it's not, and things like that. So I've actually had 2 clients. I had one client probably about a year ago who texted me, I think, on a Tuesday, and he said, "Hey, Kylie, just letting you know I paid that stamp duty on Friday night when you asked me to." And like straight away, my heart just dropped. I called him up straight away. I said, "What do you mean? Like, I didn't text you to pay any stamp duty. And I wouldn't text you on a Friday night. I would call you." And he said, "Oh, I got a text from you. It said it was you and that I had to pay the stamp duty, so I paid it." So, yeah, that was it was probably about 30 grand.
What
So that
happens
was-
in that case, Kylie? Like, is there any chance of getting that back, or is that just that's gone?
That is gone. And the thing is, he's telling me about it on a Tuesday when he did it a Friday. Like, that's long gone. It's just, yeah, he started obviously, phoning the banks, going in there, speaking to the fraud department, seeing if they could get the money back or put a hold. It was long gone. I think in his case, he was a little bit lucky. The bank just out of good faith said they'll give him some of the money back. Not all of it, but some of it. So I guess he got an okay outcome, but still lost money. And then the second one I had was a client that called me up and said, "Oh, I'm just giving you a call. You sent me that email to transfer my 150 grand for settlement. Just want to double check it's definitely you." And I said, "Well, thank God you called, because no, it wasn't." So it's happening daily where hackers are getting into emails. They're usually getting into the client's email. It's harder for them to get into ours. We've got all the firewalls and blah, blah, blah. We're Microsoft, etc. They're getting into the client's Gmail or Hotmail generally, seeing that they've got a conveyancing matter on foot, seeing a letter or an email from us, just chucking the logo on, and then, sending an email out where they might have just changed the email address by one letter or something. So the client thinks it's us, and telling them to transfer, $100,000 for their settlement or their stamp duty, whatever they're doing. And a lot of clients, it's just about educating now. So we actually, even recently, I started making purchasers and sellers actually tick a box when they're filling in their initial paperwork for us to say, "I will call you if you email, text, or ask me to pay any money." Like, that's how basic I have to make it, because as much as we say it and we put it on our emails and our letters, people in the hype are not reading everything or forgetting. And so we're just constantly reiterating this. We're always doing training in-house. We're chatting about it all the time. If one of us get a scam email, we send it to everyone and go, "Hey, scam, delete." Our industry is heavy on this. There's lots of things daily that come out about the cyber fraud. So it's just educating the clients time and time again and reminding them, please, no matter who you're paying or what it's for, not even just with conveyancing, with anything, call the person you're paying first, and not off the number in the email, off the number you have for them, or on, Google or something, and confirm the details up front, no matter how small or how big, every time. I get scared of these situations because you just hear some horror stories daily or on the news or a current affair. And it's so sad. People have actually lost their whole life savings or their whole properties over this sort of stuff. So it's so important to make sure that you're using someone as well that takes this very, very seriously, because it is a very serious topic and it's happening daily.
You need like a little code word or something, like pay the deposit, Purple Monkey dishwasher.
Give me your code word, like the banks.
I've actually got two examples where I've been scammed on one. The little one and a big one. The little one, I was just trying to buy some concert tickets on Facebook, and the person's like, "Oh, do you want to pay with Pay ID?" I'm like, "No, account, please." Gave me account details, paid my $400 for the 2 tickets, and then as soon as I paid, they're like, "Send a screenshot of confirm." Sent it, and then their profile just disappeared. Message disappeared. I was like, "Yep, there goes $400." Which was annoying because for my partner's present, and I imagine like if I was tired of money, $400 is a big deal for birthday present time. The next one was actually a bigger one, a company one. So someone emailed our accounts email, basically saying, please pay blah, blah. I think it was 35 grand into this account. And then my accounts team actually emailed back being like, "Oh, Steve, can we have an invoice for that?" Because it came from Steve Polisi. The email wasn't my email though. It was like Steve Polisi, but then the email was like gb7x@gmail or whatever. Then they sent an invoice to my accounts team. And the way I do it in my company is once a week, they create like a payroll file and I go through. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'll pay that." And I was just so lucky that it was a big number. I saw the 35K and was like, "What the hell is that?" And then I called payroll, accounts team, and they're like, "You sent us that invoice." And I'm like, "I didn't." And then I saw the email. If that was 4 or 5 grand, probably would have not noticed it. I probably just would have been like, "Oh, that's a social media, or that's that." But it was just because it was such a big one. So that was the one time I almost got tripped up.
Yeah.
I've had this a few times just with pizza and property, and Oz Propmeister said the same thing in the comments section. There's this a fake account. Well, there's been a few of them. Every time I see it, I'll report them. I'll get them banned straight away. But they've got Pizza and Property as their logo, and they'll comment as if they're me, and it even says like @Pizza and Property. And then they'll get people talking, and it'll be like, "Oh, cool! Like, come and join my blah blah blah." And I clicked on it one day, and it was like selling Bitcoin and all kinds of shit. But it was just, it looks like us. If you hadn't have known, you'd be like, "Oh, cool! Is this what they're about? Yeah, let's start talking."
Yeah, everyday people wouldn't know. We get it even on us. So we get, someone writing to us saying, "Oh, hi, I'm looking for a conveyancer. I've got the contract attached in the link. Can you click it?" And like we're so used to them now that straight away I look at the email address, I look at the wording, I'm like, delete, that's scam. And I always tell the girls anyway, if you're not sure and there's no phone number, just delete it. I don't care if we had to lose an actual legit client over it, because the risk for our clients and our business is so much higher. Yeah, it's massive. So we're pretty good at detecting it, but I don't know how everyday people would like it'd be so easy to fall for it.
There's one I can't remember the company
you were saying before. Oh, sorry, Steve.
Oh, you go, mate.
No, I was just going to say, if you were going to bulletproof it, from what you said before, I think that's really the thing is, do not call the number in the email. Call the number that you have in your phone, but make sure you always call before paying. Like it's like if you put a few checks in place beforehand, that's really the thing that rings true to me. Don't just ever blindly pay anything, even if you're thinking, "Oh yeah, this looks all right." Just a phone call, and a phone call to the actual person. And then if Kylie's like, "Oh yeah, that is me," it's like, cool. That's really the proof that you need to, in my book at least. Makes sense, a lot of sense.
It's
100%.
getting harder. So this is another story. I can't remember the company, but it was a big CEO of a really like high net worth company. And they got in, they worked out that he was going to catch a train and there was going to be a blind spot in Europe that he was going to be going through for like 40 minutes or whatever it was. So he sent an email, I cracked into his email, sent the accounts team saying, "Hey, I need money in this account quickly, like in the next hour." And then they're like, "Well, we can't do that." So he's like, "Cool, we'll do a video call." So then they video called him and they had the AI deep fake one. And it was a bit grainy, being like, "Oh, I was going through a tunnel now. Make sure you get it to this account, blah, blah, blah." And then the accounts team transferred, I can't remember what it was, like $2 million or something. and then he got
Does
out.
this actually happen, or is this like
Yeah,
the plot of a
actually
new
happened.
law?
I'll find the article and I'll post it on in the comments.
Holy shit.
And
Yeah,
just,
okay.
but the technology's there. I've got a fake AI that I can use for ads and stuff if I really want. And I'm just a nobody. So I can imagine people that are doing it full time. And got this because they knew his schedule. They knew his blacked out period. He knew that they'd question it. So he did a video with them. It's going to be scary with AI, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And they target our industry a lot.
Yeah.
I take back what I said then. More than a phone call.
No, for our everyday stuff, like you're going to be okay most of the time. It's just, I think when you get into anything that's peculiar, just like you said, just do a phone call. What else we got, Kylie? I think title insurance was something that we obviously talk quite a lot about personally and with our clients as well. Do we want to maybe touch on that?
Yeah, definitely. So title insurance, it's one of those things that, you get people that know about it and love it, and you get people that don't. They go, waste of money, another insurance, why bother? So essentially what I tell clients is years ago when a property was sold before the electronic world, and when things used to take weeks or if not months to do an exchange because it used to be by post, it was normal for buyers back then to get a survey report every time, to get a building certificate every time, to do all lists of, different government searches and stuff to try and find out as much as they can about a property, because the contract is not going to give you all the answers, unfortunately. And even due diligence will find out many things, which is great and you need it, but it's not going to give you everything. There's still so much unknown risk when you buy a property, no matter how much due diligence you do, unless you're full going to the extreme to do survey reports, building certificates, every government search, every report, an asbestos report, or, soil testing. Like nobody is going to go to those lengths. But back in the day, a survey report and a building certificate was the norm once upon a time. And then as things moved, councils got longer processing times, surveyors were not as quick to come out, and the electronic world formed. Buyers no longer order them as the norm. And in most cases, it's impossible. If you've got a, 30-day settlement or a 6-week settlement, you need to get a survey to even apply for a building certificate, and councils these days, it's just not practical. So the title insurance came into play to basically fill that void and say, okay, we know buyers are not going to do every search that they should. So there's always going to be unknown risks that you will not be able to find, unfortunately. And even if you did do surveys and building certificates, there's still unknown risks. So they've come in to fill that void to say, encourage the buyers to take out our insurance, which is a once-off payment at settlement. We cover them for the life they own the property, up to the full value of the property, for important things such as unimproved building works. So obviously if there was like a granny flat built and it wasn't approved, or a garage converted, or any sort of unapproved building works, if or when council find out and hit you with that beautiful notice to say, on the best day, show cause, and on the worst day, a demolition order, they'll come in and take care of all that and cover all the costs involved. They cover like boundary and survey defects. So if you find later that the neighbour's encroaching on your land or you're encroaching on theirs and your land is actually 200 square metres less because no one realised, they cover those sorts of things. They cover planning and title defects, outstanding rates and taxes. They even cover the registration gap, which most people don't even know what that is. So the registration gap is basically from the time you settle to the time your name is on title. There's always going to be a period. That period is shorter since the electronic world, but the period's still there. And there's been times where once it's settled, a caveat's been lodged on title or something, or a writ or a mortgage or a charge. And if that's come on before your transfer has gone through, that takes precedent. With land titles, registration takes precedent. So they cover the registration gap. They even cover like fraud and forgery if someone ever stole your ID and had the property transferred into their name, which FYI, I actually nearly had this with one of our clients about 7 or 8 years ago, 2 properties that nearly went under his skin. Literally, we saved it by, it was so close. They cover all these sorts of situations, and it's just a once-off payment at settlement. The premium differs depending on the purchase price, and they cover you for the life that you own the property. So if any of these things come up later, whether it's 1 year, 10 years, whatever, you contact the insurer, they jump in, they sort it out, they go chase whoever they need to for money or recovery, but you've got the peace of mind that it's sorted, no stress, no money out of your pocket, done. So we definitely encourage buyers to get it, and we don't get anything out of them getting it. It's not like we get any, trail or anything like that. It's just a really good peace of mind, because again, no matter how much due diligence you do, there is still unknown risks. There's nothing you can do about it. Like, you could do all the searches in the world and it's still not going to protect you 100%.
It's pretty cheap as well. It's like, well, what's the going rate for that now?
So, for example, if you bought, like, let's say a residential property between, say, 1 and 2 million, it's about $1,100-$1,200
for lifetime. That's the most
lifetime.
important
Yeah.
part,
So
lifetime.
it's not something you pay monthly or yearly. It's just once. So if you compare it to any other insurance, it's cheap as chips, because everything else you're paying for your life. Just once. And you got that peace of mind. And unfortunately, with property matters, if an issue comes up, it's generally years after, not weeks or days. It's generally years after, either when you go to develop, or your neighbor goes to develop, or you go to put in some application to build this granny flat or whatever. That's usually when it's going to be discovered. So it's generally years later. But the unfortunate thing is that when things come up with property, they're very expensive and very stressful.
I don't know if
Do you find there's certain...
I was going to say, do you remember, Kylie, the Katoomba property that I bought? And I was 99% sure that one of the bedrooms was not approved. And I was like, I'm going to get title insurance because no one's told me it's not approved. It's not on paper anyway. It's not approved. And I was going to get title insurance. And then the selling agent the day before settlement, remember, was like, just letting you know that's not approved. And I was like, damn it, there goes my title insurance.
Yeah, because they cover unknown risks. So if you've been told about it, or it's disclosed somewhere, or someone's told you, then it's no longer an unknown risk. So yes, it's unknown risk.
I think you got money off anyway. I think we got 30 grand off or something like that, which is quite nice.
Yes, I believe so.
Sorry, Toddy, what were you saying?
I was going to say, are there certain types of properties that you find, or maybe locations that are at higher risk? Like, especially because when you were talking about maybe boundary realignments, people are going to actually develop later on. I remember in Adelaide, back in was it Coromandel Valley, Blackwood, I swear they were drunk when they surveyed that area. The fences are kind of near the border. It was just like, oh yeah, it's about there. Like, when you said that, it's like, to me, the title insurance would make a lot of sense in that kind of an area. Is there like a real common factor, something like that you see, where it's like, yeah, you'd kind of be silly not to get this?
There's no particular area on its own that we think, oh, definitely you need it more than another area as such. Queensland, for some reason, there's a lot of illegal works. A lot of someone having a big 2-story house and turned it into 4 little units themselves, on the one title, and never got approval, or converting a garage into a granny flat. I find Queensland have a lot of it. Don't know why, but it's just the way it is. But I still wouldn't say just because you're buying in Queensland, you should get it, and the guy, in another state shouldn't. I say the same to everyone. But yeah, there's definitely, or if a client says, I've been there and I've seen it, and I'm a bit iffy about something, well, for sure, no brainer. I get the clients that say to me, oh, I think they've done something there that might not be approved. It just doesn't look right. Should we ask the question? That's another thing that comes up, which is a hard conversation, where they ask me, should we ask, like, if, give us the approvals, or is it approved, or when was it done? And my first question to them is, if the answer is it's not approved, are you still buying it? And if their answer is, well, yes, then don't ask and just get the title insurance, because you're actually just going to shoot yourself in the foot.
Interesting. So,
but if your answer,
in
certain cases, but if your answer is no, if I find out that's not approved, I'm not going to buy it, different story. We'll make all the inquiries in the world. But that's a hard, like someone has said to me, so we're just going to insure against it rather than checking it. And it's like, I'm not saying don't check it. What I'm saying is, if you tell me that even if I check it and the answer is no, that you're still going to buy it, then what was the purpose?
But that's insurance. Like, you get building insurance. You could theoretically send over 10 engineers and say this house is built perfectly. You'd get an insurance to cover that risk in case it's not.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, we do get those funny questions where a client will be like, that seems funny. Why would I you're saying don't check it? It's like, I'm not saying don't check it. I'm saying we've got to match your
because
position.
it feels dishonest, and that's why I kind of had as well. You're in this weird situation, but that is also the purpose of insurance. So
It's the purpose. It's unknown risk. And look, there might not be any issue there. Maybe it is approved. We don't know. But just get the insurance. They haven't disclosed it in the contract. So obviously they don't want to tell you. Highly doubt if you ask a question that's going to give you any answer. They're probably going to say purchaser make their own inquiries is usually the answer. But that little risk that they go, oh, whoopsie daisy, yeah, we forgot to put it in the contract. No, it's not approved. You know, we get that every now and again. If we're acting for a seller and we prepare the contract, we went through our wholesale questionnaire with them, said, did you do any legal works? No. Did you do this? No. Do you have boundaries? No. And then we get a purchaser write to us and go, our client inspected the property and it appears there's, a granny flat that hasn't been approved. Can you confirm, provide us the approvals? And then I'll go back to our client and he'll be like, that was years ago. I didn't think I needed to tell you now. Okay, well, now we're going to disclose
the one we used to always come against with you, Kylie, when we're buying heaps in Queensland is like carports and pergolas and stuff. They were never approved.
Always,
ever.
Yeah, always issues. And it's always like I try and tell clients again that, look, it's not probably, it might not be, that the vendor's just a dodgy man and, doesn't want to do anything right. Like some people, if it's smaller, like a pergola or something like that, they might think they don't need approval, like just old school, like this is my house. Why do I need approval? It's not a big deal. I'm not knocking it down and rebuilding it. I'm just fixing it up. So some people just generally don't know that they need approval. And then others, because the process with council these days is just so annoying and so costly, some are like, I know the risk and I don't care. I'm not going through that headache with council. And so some just choose not to. So it's not uncommon. These things come up all the time. And vendors won't always tell you either. And again, it might not be purposely. It might be just they're thinking, oh, no, that was years ago. I didn't need to tell you now. They might think that we're just asking about recent and, it's just the way it is. It's not always, people are not always going to give you that information freely.
Yeah, back on the resi side of things to keep Jeff happy as well, because I feel like it's going to be steered commercial again, Steve.
No, the resi one.
What is it, or what's the policy? Because I know this changes slightly from state to state, and more of the best practice rather than a policy. If someone's actually buying like a renovated property, then obviously you're going to need to keep like waterproofing certificates, things like that. There's certain works that need to be proved for a different period of time. Like if you've got someone that's either renovating, how long should they be keeping that for? Plus, if someone's actually buying something that's had works done, what kind of questions should they be asking to make sure it wasn't sort of dodgy Dave that slapped the tiles up?
Yeah, if you're renovating, you should generally keep things for 7 years because most timeframes with like home warranty insurance, 6 years and so many months, most things are around the 6 to 7 years. So you should generally keep things for at least 7 years if you can. Most importantly, if you can't keep everything, at least maybe the approval and the final occupation certificate would be ideal. And then if you're a purchaser buying a property, one question that clients say to me probably daily as well is like, when I say to them, you're going to get a pest and building inspection done, or at least a building inspection. No, it's brand new. Why would I need a building inspection? We see more problems these days with the brand new than the older properties, unfortunately. It's just what's happening at the moment. So we, would go in and ask for the occupation certificate. It's not so much the approval we care about, because if the OC is there, they've got the approval. You could ask for the approval just for the sake of it, but it's the occupation certificate, the home warranty insurance for residential properties. Don't forget that only applies for properties under 4 levels. So for units that are over 4 levels, including underground car parking and stuff, they don't need home warranty insurance, which is very frustrating. But anything under 4 levels or homes, home warranty insurance. Waterproofing is definitely a big one. So generally these days we're starting to ask for waterproofing certificates. We might not have in the past because the OC usually says everything's good. But because there's so many issues, the OC, an actual private certifier that issues OCs, said to me once when I had to call him, we were acting for a vendor and a purchaser was telling us that there was something non-compliant, but the OC had issued. So I had to call the private certifier and say, this purchaser saying this is not compliant and that you've issued the OC illegally, like what's happened here? He actually said to me, which I was surprised, he said, Kylie, I'm not a plumber. I'm not an electrician. I'm not a builder. I'm a private certifier. The trades submit their documents to me. I tick my boxes that they've given it, and I issue the certificate.
It's funny you mentioned the waterproofing. I've had like 3 of 3 friends who have bought like a high density apartment, have all had water issues. Like the one that lives around the corner from me in Queenscliff had literally had water running down their internal wall during storms. Must just be new build, just not designing correctly.
It is. They're just not doing the right thing with a lot of the new builds, probably more so over the last sort of 10 years where there's so many water issues.
What's that dude's YouTube channel? He runs around with a vest on looking like a Star Force
yeah.
officer.
The building inspector guy, Site Inspections Australia or something. I've got it, like, it's funny, yeah. Like he calls himself a forensic building inspector. But yeah, he's hilarious.
Always new builds, like you're saying.
Always. And that's the funny conversation with clients when they say to me, a building inspection? No, why would I do that? It's brand new. Like, I've just said something out of this world. And I'm like, no. We actually have more issues with the new ones than the old. So still do your due diligence, still check things out. Doesn't mean because one's 1 year old and one's 20 years old that the 20-year-old must be, older and crappier. It's not the case. Not the case. It's deceiving.
Yeah. One of the stories I was going to say before is one of my friends, he's had his back pergola and he spent a truckload of money building one of those alfresco kitchen things, and then blocked off one of the walls. And then because he replaced the roof sheet, he raised it a little bit, and then nothing was on, had it for about 5 years. Next door was building a brand new double story and realized that it wasn't, like, it was too high for what it needed to be. He's going through the whole thing, trying to get it approved. He's probably going to have to rip the whole thing down, like $50,000 worth.
Yeah, they notice. I'll tell you one quick little story we had years ago. A buyer was buying a property to move into, and it was right before Christmas, and they had a few kids. And the buyer calls me up and says, we've already exchanged at that point, so contracts are signed and dated. And the buyer calls me up and says, hey, I'm just wondering, the contract's got a pool compliance certificate, but I just don't see how it's compliant because there's 3 entries from the house direct to the pool, no fence or anything. And I've got little kids about to move in.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, it was council that actually issued that approval, not even a pool inspector. So I said, go get a pool inspector out, let him do his report, and then we could speak to council if that's what you want me to do. He's like, yeah, I want you to do that. So he gets a pool report. The guy says, because council issued it, I can't override it, but my report will show why it's not compliant. So he gave us the report. We submitted it to council, which was on the instruction from our client. Council jumped on it straight away because as soon as we mentioned pool and kids about to move in, they jumped there and then, like within an hour, they had a notice out to the owner redacting the approval and issuing them an order to rectify it immediately. And not just that, from the pictures in the pool report, they saw illegal works and issued a notice of intention to issue a demolition order as well.
Did they have title insurance?
We were acting for buyer and we hadn't settled yet, so that was irrelevant. Our buyer ended up pulling out of that contract right before settlement, but it was frustrating for him. Like, he didn't want to do that. It was right before Christmas. He had little kids and it was really caused a lot of stress and heartache. Even though he didn't buy the property and didn't have to have the problems, the stress and issues it causes, snowball effect with other things, can be a lot as well.
I want to ask something, and it's kind of to both of you, and I don't mean any offense by this, but like as an ex-selling agent and a conveyancer representing the seller, do you find like a weird, what's the word I'm looking for, almost like a conflict of interest to be honest per se, because your job's, if there is something wrong, Kylie, to protect the buyer, also protect the seller as much as you can, obviously with those things in your clauses and your special conditions. How do you go around like mentally with that? And I'm saying you're lying, but I've asked the same thing to selling agents as well. Like, how do you find that middle ground for not being too much of a bulldog and letting like a deal go through?
Yeah, look, there's situations where we're even told, like if you over disclose and it was something you didn't need to legally, a claim can be brought against us, for putting the vendor in that position as well, where it was meant to be buyer beware, for instance, and we over disclose. So it is hard. Sometimes we've got to have conversations with vendors that we don't think are being really honest because of the information we're getting from buyers and stuff. We'll go back to the vendor and say, hey, this buyer is asking this and this buyer is asking that. Like, are you sure you haven't done works or you? And we know from their responses, they're lying.
Yeah.
But we can't do anything about it. We can only work on the instruction. But we do obviously really heavily relay back to them that, listen, you've got a duty to disclose illegal works, for instance, or if it's something else that they must. If you don't, and this buyer goes to council and gets them out to inspect, and council, if there's any matter that would justify an upgrading or demolition order, this buyer can pull out there and then, and they could even come back at you for some damages. So you're better off just being open and honest up front, because if, for example, if they're selling a property, imagine what that would do to them if right before a settlement on their sale and their purchase, their sale falls over because this buyer pulled out because he found out some information, and then they're going to breach their contract on their purchase and lose their 10% deposit. So it's in their best interest in most cases, to be honest. But there's some situations where we know they're not. If they tell us to specifically lie, if it's something material, we might have to say to them, look, we're not going to do that. You either tell the truth or we won't be able to act for you. Because it's a hard situation.
It's just because we've worked together like 300, 400 plus times, obviously on the buying side. So I've seen how like aggressive you are with getting it on the buy side. I've never really thought about, I never really thought about you representing the seller, even though you've sold, obviously done the contract for the properties I've sold as well. But like there was nothing special about those. I didn't have to hide anything. I've never actually thought about like, oh yeah, sometimes like you kind of need to get the best outcome for the seller as well.
We do, yes, within limits, not doing anything dodgy or hiding particularly. But if it's something we have to protect them with legally, like sometimes a buyer might ask a question and we have to say to the vendor, don't answer it. Because if you answer it in the wrong way, you could put yourself in more risk when you were just trying to be open and honest. Don't answer it, buyer beware. But if it's something they have to disclose, like we'll tell our vendors straight as well, like don't be gross, you need to disclose it. You know,
it's the same for selling agents, I imagine, Todd. Like I want my selling agent to get me the best price. And like I don't want them to lie, but your game is, I imagine, somewhat of deception to get the best price.
It's exactly the same as what you do, just in reverse on the other side of it, because it's like for me, I always want to make sure, well, not anymore, but years ago when I did it, like the first one that comes to mind is when I was selling an apartment, literally just before I left the career, and they had all of these special levies, like ridiculous special levies in this building. I'm talking like $2 million for the roof, $400,000 for the elevator shaft. The strata was already $1,800 a quarter, which isn't great, and it jumped up to $5,000 a quarter. I've talked about this on the show before, right? And I had to spin this as if this was this fantastic thing that was happening. The guy that I was selling this to was just like, oh no, it's an investment in the building. It means that they're super proactive. And I'm listening to the shit that's coming out of my mouth, just thinking, I really hope you don't believe me, bro. But it's like my job though was to sell this for the agent, who, if I told you her story, she was this absolute sweetheart that paid too much for the thing, was like promised the world by the agent, had sat on the thing for 10 years, hadn't gone up in value. She was just trying to not lose money before they retired. So it's like, that's the person that I'm working for. That's the person that's paying me. So I then have what's known as a fiduciary duty to do everything in my power to make sure I get the best result for her. But then equally in the opposite way is like, if you, Steve, you've got the chance to be like, call up your client, be like, mate, I can buy this building for $2 million. This is worth 2.5 every day of the week. You don't feel bad that you're ripping off the vendor because you're working for the buyer.
I'll tell you my equivalent of that, and Kylie's seen me do it, especially back in the resi days, when you get a build and press report, and I'd literally list out the 10 items that were wrong, and guess what the price that you replace them for? It's like, oh, leaking toilet, $2,200. Well, I was overinflating it by 5-fold, and then cool, it's 30 grand worth of works, but we're going to request 25 grand, even though it's 10 grand. And so I was doing the exact same for the buyer. So that's a good point.
Yeah, it is. It is. And we see it on both sides. We sit in the middle and just go, oh, this is going good. This guy wants $1 million more and this one wants $1 million less. And yeah, we'll see where we end up in between.
Those days, remember, Kylie, back in like 5-6 years ago, it's the Logan Ipswich days where every property was a negotiation for building and pest.
Yeah.
Not so much anymore. Now it's a hot market. You've barely got any wiggle room.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just educating clients more around that stuff too these days, you know, understanding that not every property is perfect. There's always going to be little things.
Yeah. No, this has been awesome. So, Toddy, you want to say something first?
I was actually just going to quickly say, just on the building and pest side of things, you touched on this earlier, Kylie, like around building reports that are supplied like by agents, because I know there's a few companies now starting to pop up where it's more like almost like a independent third party. So it's not ordered by the agent, it's not ordered by the vendor, it's not ordered by the purchaser, kind of thing. Are you seeing a bit more of that? And is there a different layer of trust with that yet, or is it like, no, it's still a bit too new? Your thoughts?
Someone still has to order it. Someone still has to order the reports and pay for the reports.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's it's just a risky one. There's been a lot of court cases and things where buyers are bought down the track. They found there's all sorts of issues. It wasn't in the report, and they've got no recourse against anyone because they didn't order their own independent inspection. So there's big warnings these days about, look, do your own due diligence. I think agents having the report is good from a marketing perspective, so agents can see if there is anything wrong and how they're going to market that and all the rest, which is awesome. Probably smart agents would do that. And maybe for last minute buyers, because I tell a buyer, if an auction's tomorrow and you've got no time to do a report, well, a report's better than no report, I guess. But you should always be doing your own, so that if something goes wrong, whether purposely or by accident, you've got someone to sue.
Todd, are you talking about, so when I looked at a property last week, the agent sent me a link for building and pest reports, and I clicked and it took me to like 10 building and pest companies, and you could book through their link. And I was like, this is better than just the one where, you know, you can get the $49 one or whatever it is. I'm like, this is better. But my rationale with that is, if they're a really stringent building and pest inspector and they're like, this is horrible, do you think they're going to make that list for long? I'm pretty sure they'd get booted, and they want some more of the blasé ones.
They will be booted. I've actually had inspectors say that to us, that they've had agents or vendors ask them to remove things from their report because it doesn't look good for sale.
Yeah.
I remember speaking to a guy, Jared, I think it was in Perth, and he was actually saying he did get the one from the agent, and he works in the industry, knows it. He's like, oh, I'll just get my own. Thing was riddled with white ants. And it must have been found, like, because otherwise it was like, come on, how could you not find that? But exactly to your point there, Kylie, it's like, if he had have just gone, cool, oh yeah, I'll use this report, no recourse, nothing to do about it.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing. It's not about like, oh, the agent or the vendor is being dodgy. Like, yeah, that can happen too. But that's not what it's just purely about. It's just, it is what it is. They're the seller, you're the buyer. Do your own checks. Let them do their own thing. You know, it's
well, it comes back to. Sorry to interrupt you, but it comes back to exactly what we were talking about beforehand. It's like, if you're employing Steve to be in your corner, he's in your corner. But I'm not. If you're employing me to be in your corner, I am. But Steve's not. And if you are, so it's like, who are you actually got on your team?
Yeah, 100%. And exactly like you had with when you're working in the agency industry, we've got a fiduciary duty, and it's drummed into our head as well that remember who you're working for, and you need to work solely in their best interest. Because if I have someone else's best interest at heart, how would I be able to act in my client's best interest? You know, so you need someone acting in your best interest, whether that be an agent, a buyer's agent, conveyancer, whoever it is, because they're just going to look out for you and you only, regardless. In a way, it's like, regardless who we hurt in the process, we have to look after you. You know, we're not out there to hurt anyone, but it's all about you.
I think the point is there's got to be a good.
I think we can.
Yeah. Well, I think they've got to be a good conveyancer or a good broker or a good buyer's agent, because everyone's got an agenda. Everyone wants to be paid at the end of the day. But like I said at the start, the conveyancer is a good one because you're kind of getting paid no matter what. So you just get to actually be the nice impartial judge of everything.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not like we make like huge money, you know, we don't make 50 grand a pop, or like our fees, like for us to lose a client, like it's neither here or there in terms of fees.
Yeah.
So it's more of the work.
I'll give you a bit of a wrap here. And I've told you many times you need to increase your fees, because I see some, especially for commercial, some solicitors are charging like 12, 14 grand, and they're horrible, like absolutely horrible. And you're like a fraction of that, but different type of. Anyway, I've used Kylie hundreds of times, so yeah, I actually mind vouching for you.
Oh, thank you, Steve, and same in return. I've used him a million times. I always sound like the biased conveyancer going, Steve's great, use Steve. Yes, but it is true. Yes, we've dealt with each other for probably 10 years now on many, many matters, personal, work, otherwise, neighbors, friends, the world. So it's always a good experience.
I feel left out now.
Toddy,
Have a
I
go,
told
Kylie.
you were one of my first podcasts when I started Policey Property.
Oh, thank you, Steve.
But let's maybe finish. I just realised the time. We've got some rapid fire questions, which we've kind of already covered, but it might just be a nice little summary to kind of finish it off. So let's maybe just have a look at these. So, agent saying you don't need a finance clause because you've got pre-approval.
So am I answering that or?
Yeah, this is all for you, Kylie.
Oh, okay. So yeah, just a few little like quick things like, would you sign this contract? So the contract has no finance clause. Agent says you don't need it because you got a pre-approval. Would you sign it? Would you not? Beep, beep, beep.
No.
Red flag. Next one.
Next one, what do we got?
But before we get into the next one, Steve, is there another ad you need to play?
No, oh, we got my ad, but I can't be bothered. I was actually enjoying this too much. If you want my books, guys, go to policeyproperty.com. They're for free.
I've just seen the message come through. I don't want you to get in trouble.
I don't care. I'm being host today. People know who I am. Anyway, free books. We've got a free commercial course as well. Just go to policeyproperty.com.
So next one. Vendor wants to stay in the property for 60 days post-settlement, rent-free. Would you just go ahead and sign that contract? We need to draft up special clauses around that if we're even going to agree to it, essentially. Next one.
There are some special clauses. So we're doing a development at the moment in Kiama, and the seller who was the resident, we're actually giving him I think 3 months to actually live there and get all that other stuff sorted. So again, you need all the clauses in place for that. Yes.
But you guys are a bit kinder, and your risk tolerance is probably higher as well. But yes, you need to just work out insurance, what happens if they don't leave, all that sort of stuff, because you don't have a residential tenancy agreement in place. So you just need to nut out that stuff if you want to agree to it.
Can I add a quick fire on that? So what gives you more protection than in this case, giving a license to occupy or actually drawing up like a 60-day lease?
So for the tenant, a lease is better. For the landlord, a license is better, because for the tenant, they want all the protections in the world under the Residential Tenancy Act. For a vendor, they don't want any protections for the tenant under the Residential Tenancy Act. So if you're acting for a vendor and they want to say lease it back, and especially if it's a shorter period, we usually go with a license, because we don't want the purchaser to have that much protection, because it's harder to get them out. If you had to get them out, you have to go through tribunals and all that sort of stuff. So you would rather, if you're a vendor, if you're a landlord, you'd rather a license, but if you were a tenant, you'd rather a tenancy agreement.
One of the case studies in my best-selling development book, we actually
Steve
had
Policey, that is.
We actually one of the case studies was one of the developers, because we interviewed about 20 developers for it. When he bought the house and he was going to do development, he actually got squatters that actually came into the property and stayed there, and that was a massive ongoing saga to try to get them out.
Adverse possession is huge. If someone actually stays in your property for at least 12 years, maintains it, and pays the rates on it, they can have the property transferred into their name.
Oh, really?
But that's a whole nother subject, so we won't get into that.
There is like Facebook groups, actually, I've seen this in the States and I've seen it on TikTok, and they're literally dedicated to teaching you how to get property by being a squatter.
Yeah, you got to be a squatter.
I've actually always thought that of like, you like in the neighborhood, the houses that have been empty and there's no one in them. And I imagine it's an overseas buyer. And you're just like, I could just move into that, give it a flick, like fresh lick of paint, put a carpet down, probably get a couple of years out of it and then move on to the next one. Basically live rent free your whole life.
Yeah. There's always a couple of those around.
I'm going to start a Facebook group, I think. Start doing that type of
Steve,
next one, off the plan. So we touched on this quite a fair bit.
Off the plan contract with a 3-year sunset clause, giving full control to the developer to extend dates uncapped, or terminate and rescind when they like. Would you sign that sort of contract? But again, you need us to go through it to tell you that it's in there.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I actually, we touched on this a little bit at the start. I find like I'll get excited about a deal. Like I find like a commercial for me or a house I like, oh, this is really cool. And then I send it to you, and no offense, you bring it down back to reality real quick. You're like, don't like this, don't like this, don't like this, remove this. And you're like, thought I had a good one.
Yeah, but they're different. Like you're looking at the physical You know, where we're looking at the contract and the paperwork, and we're not looking at the physical at all. It's not emotional for us 1 inch. Like it's emotional in terms of like helping the client and doing all that. But the property itself is not emotional to us at all. And we haven't even seen it. So we're just looking at the paperwork. But it doesn't mean it's still not a great deal, Steve. It just means we might have to have some negotiation done and a bit of back and forth with the other side, and then we'll be good.
Yeah, I've got a good question on Facebook from Heather Jordan. So hello, Heather. She's actually wrote, would you buy dual occupancy property with one unapproved dwelling on site? And I used to see this quite a lot, obviously, when people are living downstairs and it's like the unapproved head height, or they've built a granny flat at the back that's unapproved. What are the risks and ramifications of that?
Yeah, you need to understand the risk and see if that's, one, your risk tolerance can handle it. Two, you've got the money and time when it does come up to sort it. Because essentially, when you're buying a property with illegal works like that, you have to think of down the track, if and when council find out, it's probably more when rather than if, but it's just a matter of when. They will issue you a notice or order, depending how bad the works are or what the works are. They could give you a show cause to say, tell us why we shouldn't issue a demolition order or an upgrading order. They could issue an upgrading order, meaning that you need to go and do a whole list of works to make it compliant, like fire safety, all that sort of stuff. Or they could straight out issue a demolition order and tell you to absolutely remove it straight away because it's just highly unsafe and they wouldn't approve it in, a lifetime. So that's one aspect, council. But then you've got the next aspect, insurance. So if there's illegal works, insurers are usually not going to insure them. Or they might just insure it initially because they want to take your money, but there'll be fine print to say if they find out later, if there's a fire and there's illegal works there and they're not going to pay out. So you've got that part. And then secondly, even probably more importantly too, that if you're going to rent it out, again, having a tenant in there, if something happens in terms of a fire or flood or something like that, and something serious happens to the tenant, you're going to be personally liable because no insurance company is paying out on that sort of stuff. So you've got a lot to think about, and you need to work out, like I've had a client say to me, I'm happy to take the risk because I'm going to move in and I'm getting a cracker deal. It's 300 grand under value, so I don't care what comes up later. All right, well, if you've looked at all the, what it's going to cost you, what the risks are and what it means for you and you're happy with it, great. But if you haven't and you don't have the money or the means or any way to sort it, if these things come up, then it's probably not good for you. Or take out, if no one knows about it, hasn't been disclosed or anything like that, you can take out the title insurance. So again, it really differs for each individual and their circumstance.
I had a property back in the day where it was a legal head height and I was renting it out. And back then I was like, oh, well, if I get caught, I'll just kick them out. And only now that I'm thousands of acquisitions down, like you said, the insurance is the big one. Like you're thinking, oh, yeah, I'm going to lose a rent. No, you could be liable if someone dies, like criminally.
100%. And especially if it's a habitable space, that's worse. Like if it's someone's converted a garage a bit to a little office or a storage, okay, it might be a bit more minor in comparison and easier to fix or easier to remove, and no one's sleeping in there, so it's not a habitable space where the risk is high that if there was a fire or something like that. But if it's a full-blown habitable space like a granny flat or a dual occupancy downstairs converted, like they got the higher risk.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Because fire safety, especially fire safety is a big one.
I think we need to end on a positive note. Maybe do we have a feel good story? So we're not talking about fire.
Positive note. Well, I don't know if this. A big win. My big win is settlement date. When I can call them and go, guess what? We've settled. You're the new owner of the property. But positive notes are more like situations where I have to move mountains to get something done that no one else would. Like it could be even a week ago, we had a client that was selling. He had a DHA, a charge on title from the Defence Housing for a lease many years ago. Yeah. And we couldn't get hold of Defence Housing to remove it. And it kept just ticking over department through department. We got to the day before settlement. We've got the purchaser on the other side crying to us that they got removalists booked in. What are they going to do now if we can't settle? We've got the vendor crying that he's got to pay all these debts and he needs his money. And so I had to sit there that night and just rack my brain and think, okay, who I know, I need to call on contacts here. It's not what I know now, it's who I know. I need to make stuff happen. So our team couldn't get it done in 2 months. But then just over that one night, the next day, I was literally able to not only get hold of DHA, they instructed their solicitors, but then the solicitors had another hiccup where they said the dealing they got to lodge is a paper dealing, so it can't be lodged at settlement. We've got to wait 2 weeks. I begged, pleaded, and cried with Land Titles Office the whole day, and I had to just sort of make this miracle happen. But I got it done, which was a miracle. And so those moments are happy moments as well, because I was doing it for my client, of course, but even just as a human, if you got a purchaser on the other side crying that they're about to move in, they got removalist book, like I'm a human too. So, you know, it's about doing those things that you get great outcomes and everyone's happy in the end. It could have turned to a nightmare settlement, could have been delayed by a few weeks. Who knows where the purchaser would be living or what they'll be doing. The vendor's got debts piling up. So it's those moments that we get into a tricky situation and I find a way out of the tricky situation and make everyone happy. They're the moments that you really highlight and remember.
Yeah, you definitely go above and beyond. The amount of like 9 p.m. emails and calls I've had from you over the years getting problems solved. So no, kudos to you. Thanks, Kylie.
No, thank you. And like I said, I'm always there to help. It is a stressful situation and it can be very costly and very stressful if something goes wrong. So it's like I won't leave until I've sorted it.
Yeah. All right. So how do people get a hold of you? I'm going to put up your world-class conveyancing, but maybe where do you cover? What states of Australia do you cover?
So New South Wales and Queensland is essentially what we do. If people come to us about other states, we usually refer them on to someone in that state. Not that we can't do it. It's just I'd say I don't do something unless I'm 100 or 1,000% competent in it. And if it's something I don't do, I'm not going to even dabble in it. So yes, Queensland and New South Wales. We do conveyancing and obviously recently started staging, styling and minor makeovers to increase sale prices, which is bringing huge results. So yeah, reach out on website, Facebook, Instagram, mobile, whatever you like, text, email, call. Happy to help.
Any time of day.
Midnight if you want. I might not answer straight away, but I will at some point. No, yeah, happy to help.
No, awesome. And Toddy, thanks for jumping on late notice as well. Really appreciate it. And I've had a lot on today.
Thank you guys for having me. This has actually been a really good chat, Kylie. And I think this is going to be something that, I mean, like we said at the very beginning, it might not be the fun, sexy, exciting kind of stuff, but getting it wrong, as I've even shared with one of my stories, can cost you a lot of money. So by actually having someone in your corner like Kylie that really understands the details of it, this has been an hour and 51 minutes that's potentially saved someone tens of thousands of dollars in mistakes.
Yeah, 100%. And thank you so much for having me on. You're both, inspiring and knowledgeable people. So I was very nervous coming on, but I made it. And thank you so much for having me.
No, thanks, Kylie. And as Joe Tucker says, let's go buy some commercial property.